Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is in your place. Welcome to Love Sophia, musings of a wholehearted woman. Thank you, everyone, for your avid support to our podcast, and I received really good feedback about our cause, this advocacy on mental health, relating it to psychology, philosophy, and even to spirituality. Okay, so just a disclaimer, this is just a supplementary podcast or information to professional counseling and therapy, psychotherapy. So if ever you are undergoing something, thank you for choosing to listen to our podcast, but I highly recommend that you also undergo consultation with these professionals. All right. So today I would like to talk about another very important concept for well-being, which is boundary setting. Okay, so knowing what is yours and what is not. Okay, and before we start, I have a few questions. So have you ever experienced that the tasks land on you without you knowing where did it come from? How did you say yes to those commitments? If you are a student or a worker or you're an employee, so that's my question to you. Or have you ever experienced that you were pushed to do what you don't like to do? Or have you become worried that other people's problems, even though it's not part of your circle of influence? So it's much better that you also listen to our previous podcast on control, what you can control, knowing your circle of influence, so that it can be a good stepping stone to this topic, okay? Because I have a practical activity that I gave there so that you can be aware of what you can control and what you cannot control. Because these two topics on boundary setting is very much related to each other. All right? So, what is boundary setting? So, as I've already mentioned for some time in this podcast, it is knowing what is yours and what is not. And what knowing what others can do to you and not do to you. Okay, so let's take an analogy of a certain land. So I think every one of us lives somewhere. Maybe you are on Earth, maybe you are in Mars. That's a joke. I know it's corny, but you just laugh to support me, okay? So yeah, we have lands, and I live in the Philippines, and we have actually certain issues about territory. So this will not be too political, but I will just cite that because that's a very good analogy for it. So in our lands, we have territories, right? So the sovereignty, stuff like that, are at stake when our territories are not colonized, but it's there are people who comes to own it, diba? Okay, so that's a big issue. And even in our seas or in our oceans, there are also boundaries, there are territories. So if ever fishermen are in the ocean and it's near, for example, the the territory or the boundary of a certain place like Thailand, I think the neighboring countries, what will happen? Okay, so they will be caught by the authorities. They will be imprisoned. All right. So we know about these things on that on that on that um on that note, diba? On that example. But how do we know the boundaries that we should have or that we already have on our own selves in relation to other people and in relation to the world, in relation to our environment? Okay, because I think it takes more time and introspection to really know about this, because sometimes we live our lives that okay, I'm just living my life and I'm just living it the way I see other people live their lives, diba? Because we have idols, we have models, or it's because we live our life the way we live it because that's how we lived our life. That's how our families has already been. Okay, so why is it important for us to talk about this? Right. So first, of course, is that it will contribute for us to have a healthy sense of self or knowing our identity. Second, we can be less troubled about what is out of our scope of our responsibility or our circle of influence. Okay, so that's why I wanted you to go to that podcast first, so that this episode will be easier for you to grasp. Okay, but anyway, you can just go there later. Okay, and lastly, you will not fall into certain transactions, certain relationships that can put us into abusive ones. Okay, and we will know how to respect our boundaries and also our dignity. It's very important. Okay, it's already raining, but I hope it won't affect the audio. All right, so those are the importance, okay, for having a healthy boundary. So what could we do so that we will have a healthy boundary? So as I've said, maybe we are not so aware about our boundaries, or that we really put boundaries to others, to certain circumstances, even to our environment, so that we can maintain, diba? We can maintain our well-being. So first tip, if that is the case, is for you to reflect. All right, to reflect, have that silent moment in a day or time in your day that you just free yourself from the cell phone, from media or other conversations. Maybe you are a person who have quiet time, or you pray, or you meditate. You take that, yeah, that's a good time for you to think about that, not actually on the meditation, because it's a different activity. So just maybe just spare some time so that you will be able to really be to see and to probably hear your voice or your thoughts. Okay, and identify what is your territory. Okay, so know what is yours first before you will know what's others. Probably you can do that hand in hand as well. So know what you really believe in. Maybe you can write down in a piece of paper. You get a piece of paper and write down 1 to 10 that you believe, I believe, or I am statements. Okay, or so that you can know your values. Okay, to know your values, your belief systems, to know what is healthy for you and what is not. All right, so you can do that. For the values that you have, you can also try to list down from 1 to 10 what you really value in life. For example, your faith, your family, your career, etc., etc., your relationships. All right. And another way for you to reflect on that is to see yourself that you're in a coffin, and then people are giving their last message, the message that is in the on the wake, diba? The burial. Tapos you also identify, or you listen, or what do you want them to say about you, especially those people who are close to you, whom you value. All right, so probably your parents, if they're still alive, your children, your co-workers, your partner, your friends, if you have those who are significant to you. What could they say about you, about your life, the way you live your life? So in that way, you can actually tease out what are your belief systems, what are your values, what do you regard highly, right? So you can do that so that you can reflect. And also, you may also want to reflect on how you respond to certain distressful events that happen into your life, or even the news, because the news has a lot of negative events. That's the news, right? It's called the news because it's the news, right? So how do you react to that? How do you respond to it? Okay, do you believe that you are responsible about it, or do you just let it pass? Okay. Another is to reflect on your relationships, and I believe that you can see a lot of your boundary setting once you know that your loved one is undergoing something very hard, very difficult, just such as an illness. Okay, and they have their own problems. Okay, on that note, to elaborate further on the relationships, I wanted you to list down how you respond on those. Just like on the news, do you also become so affected that their issues or their concerns become yours as well? Dinadala mo sila. I mean, you're carrying too much of the burden. Okay? Which is quite normal if you have that kind of attachment to that person, especially if you are a parent. Diba? We can't really separate that. The worries, the uneasiness when those very difficult moments happen in our lives. It's quite normal. However, after that reaction, after that moment that you learn about it, what do you do right after? Okay? So you will know. On the other end, probably you won't care. Diba? That's the extreme one. Okay, so our goal for today is for you to know the balance, right? so that you'll be able to put that boundary. Because just like if we are on the physical on the boundary in our land, in the territories that we have, if there are people who will be settling on our territory, then that's a disrespect, diba? We will feel disrespected if people do that. And you now question, okay, so since people habitate on the land that we own, so what is their right and what is now your right? Okay, so if you let that happen, where is your authority actually? That's the main question. So there are also things that you can do so that you can, if you already know about your value system, what is healthy for you and what is not, and on reflecting also on your relationships and how you respond to it, now you can know what you have control over and what you don't have control over. Because most of the time, diba, as I have said in the previous podcast on controlling what you can control, you have control actually on what you let in, diba, on that boundary. Okay? On yourself, what you let in. Because what is tricky when it comes to your psychological well-being or psychological health is that there's no concrete boundary that you really put, right? So it's something that is invisible, but you know it's there. Okay, so that's why I want you to be aware first of these certain things. That's why reflection is really needed. And thank you for being open for that. And it might take you a long while to do it. So you can do this for as long as you need to. You have the whole week before I release another podcast. So you think about that. And then with regards to the tips that I will give, this are just few tips that you can apply in your life so that you will have that healthy boundary. All right. So of course, be assertive on what you have. So just like in the real territories of the nation, of our country, there are people who are guarding it. So you must be on guard. Okay. If you know that, okay, this is not mine. For example, the tasks that are given to you are not mine. That's another people's task. So you can say no. You can assert for that. But it should be polite as well. And culturally here in our place in the Philippines, we have this concept of hiya, or we are ashamed, we are shy to actually be assertive, and that's part of our culture. So if you are not a Filipino, I think if you are from the West, I think it's much easier for you to put that, to assert your opinions. Okay, but for in case of people who have this concept, who are in this culture that we are ashamed of hurting other people's feelings, you can do it politely. You might say, you can say yes. You do acknowledge that they need help, but okay, the keyword is but. Okay, you say something that you will not be able to do it. Okay, you may want also to tell them that you have certain commitments, you have certain responsibilities to do, so you might not have enough time for you to comply on what they want you to do. That is their job. All right. Okay, so letting them be aware about your own responsibilities, it will actually change, their view of it. Okay, they can delegate it to others. Another is, of course, to to also just get out of the environment that really that exceeds the boundary that you put. Okay, so for example, you have this partner who treats you badly. You can actually leave, but it's another kasi na topic. It's a quite long topic to talk about it, maybe in another podcast. When it comes to violence against women and children, there are a lot of dynamics that happens there. But if you can go on your own, you're independent, okay, you're not really bound to anything with that person, then you can leave the relationship. That could be one. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and discernment as well. So you really have to consult other people as well, but make sure that those people, much better if they are professionals, and they can give you really an objective point of view of what's happening in your life. So that's a bigger thing to talk about. All right, so how about certain circumstances or events that happens in your life? How can you put boundary to it? So for example, if the news is really stressing you out, you're thinking more about what's happening in the world, you can also put boundaries to those information. If it's in social media as well, you can also put boundaries to that. You can switch off, right, the television. Don't watch the news if it really affects you too much. So that's also good. Or you can unfollow the certain pages or people, okay, that really gets into your nerve. As what one of the quotes that I shared in our page from the Mindful Christianity, you can complain all you want that people are sucking up the energy out of you because of their attitude, but you cannot let them do that if you are always giving them the straw, right? It really makes sense. So that's why you can only do that if you have that reflection. You can reflect on your own values, your belief systems, and knowing what's really healthy for you. All right, so having that kind of environment that really supports your well-being, okay, limiting, diba? Just like those things, you really have to assert, you really have to fight for that boundary, okay? So yeah, that's it. Basically, we talked about what is boundary setting and why is it important for us to have these healthy boundaries. And I also gave you certain tips so that you can know what really is yours, what is not yours. So awareness is key, just like I've said in the previous podcasts. And of course, processing it is the next key step so that you can live your life to the most healthy, okay, with that well-being, okay, to the wellness that you want in your life, okay, to have a healthy mind, not only to have a healthy body and to have a healthy mind as well, even a healthy heart. All right, so I would like to add, okay, that putting boundaries is also not being rude. All right, so we still say things nicely, and I believe when we are learning something new, we can do it overly, and it's quite normal. Overlearning is normal. It's one of the concepts in behavioral psychology. We tend to overlearn something because we are so passionate Okay, when we learn something new, we have a certain passion, right? Just like me, I just learned how to create videos and also to do podcasts, and I tend to overlearn the skill. So it's quite normal at first, but it will tame down. So because you will adjust, okay, you will tend to adjust what is um, for you is too much and not too much. Okay, so try to do that. Parang use this as do some trial and error, and if you can, you search for more articles online. Psychology Today is one of the trusted. I actually trust that blog because it's it's an easy read. You can also go to YouTube channel Psych2Go. They give information in psychology that are very digestible, and it's an easy read. All right, so that's one thing that I wanted to remind you. And of course, I wanted to also add something that is part of the practices that I do in my spirituality. So when when we have no when we commit sins, we go to confession so that those mistakes, not mistakes, but more on sins that we committed will be erased. Okay, so that's part of actually knowing what you can control and not. Okay, because sometimes a divine forgiveness or divine mercy can heal us, diba? Not through our own energy or to our own will sometimes, but we need a higher being who is God, who can forgive us, who can help us change. Okay, all right, so that's one of the things that you can do as well. And of course, we have also other practices such as what certain practices that I have in mind. Not being on places that can lead us to sin. Okay, so that's one of the things also. That's boundary setting. Okay, because you know that it won't be healthy for you, especially if your value system it's conservative. You really believe in God. You really believe that we have to obey Him. I truly believe that. And the time that I was able to be solid on my faith, on what I believe in, things became easier. Actually, I know what I should not do and what I should do, and things becomes easier because in our life actually, right now in our society, we are put in a diverse world that information are free flowing. There are a lot of value systems that are in place, more or less like secularism, being more individualistic and being more relative, and not having that as compared before, that in our society, okay, not only in religious, okay, realm, but in our society, there are certain things that are really definite. Okay, so we know what to do and what not to do because there are certain consequences for that. But right now, more and more that people, things are relative, it depends upon you, and we are burdened actually of what do I really want to do with all the freedom that I have. And sometimes with all the freedom that we have, it's quite hard not to surpass the boundaries or the rights of other people. And that's quite sad. It's really sad, diba? And we really have to know. That's why that's the first thing that I wanted you to know is to know your value system, because you know what you're fighting for. You're not in limbo, okay? That you don't know what you're fighting for in the first place. All right, so that's it. And I just wanted to reiterate, I already gave a summary earlier. Okay, so I gave you a context of why we need to talk about boundary setting, and I also give some tips on how you can identify your value systems, your belief systems, and of course some of the tips that can help you assert yourself and to know really what you can how you can fight for your territory, what is yours, and so that others will invade it. Okay, and of course, friendly reminder, it is we should be respectful as well, even though we wanted to say no. And last but not least, I just remembered, okay? So if it's hard for you to say no, think about this like this, that what you say yes is that is also bound for you to you are also bound to not having what you want. Because if you say yes to something that you don't want, then the consequence could be unhappiness, because you said yes to something that you don't want. So you rather say no to things that are not really, should not be yours. And it's not part of your value system. It's not part of what you believe in. It's not part of your tasks. It's not part of what you have to think about. All right? So I hope that you get one or two things about how you can cultivate your well-being, and know that you are valued. I value you. I pray for you. I have prayer intentions always, and you are part of it. Sabi ko nga before that mahalaga ka at may halaga ka. You have value, and you are worthy. You are worthy of having a life that is well lived. And I hope that you become also a person who can be life-giving to others. So this has been Love Sophia. Take care, and may you have a great day or night or afternoon.